I'm pleased to introduce our next speaker, Dr. Tom Harnisch. He joined SHEEO in 2020 as Vice President for Government Relations. Dr. Harnisch leads the planning, implementation, and coordination of SHEEO's portfolio of federal relations, policy, communication, and advocacy work. He monitors new and potential federal action, legislation, rules, and other policies and actions that have relevance for our membership. Dr. Harnisch is responsible for bringing these issues to the attention of SHEEO staff and SHEEO's membership, and for articulating their potential impact on our members and the institutions and students they serve. Prior to joining SHEEO, Dr. Harnisch worked in a series of roles at the American Association of State Colleges and Universities since 2007, including as Director of State Relations and Policy Analysis. His roles included policy research, analysis, and communication to the AASCU membership and other external stakeholder groups. He helped craft the AASCU public policy agenda and planned a higher education government relations conference. His research interests and commentary on higher education, finance, access, affordability, and other topics have been cited in over 300 articles, including the New York Times, the Washington Post, Politico, Inside Higher Ed, and the Chronicle of Higher Education. He is also an adjunct faculty member at Georgetown University and the George Washington University. Dr. Harnisch earned a bachelor's degree from the University of Wisconsin-Madison, a master's from the University of Minnesota, and a doctorate from George Washington University. Please help me welcome Dr. Tom Harnisch.
Well, thank you, Representative, for that warm introduction, and thank you, Susan and Chancellor, for the chance to come back to MEC. I think this is my 11th year now in a row, every year delivering good news, of course.
And we keep bringing you to Ohio for things.
Yeah, this is my third trip to Ohio in about the last 6 weeks, so it's great to be back here. 2 trips to Columbus, 1 to Cleveland, never been to Cleveland, so just really excited to be here. And again, just thank you to personally for MEC. They got my career started. I used to be in the back row as a MEC staffer working on those contracts, and we would go down to the Big Ten Center in Chicago with all those technology companies and get those contracts going. So thank you so much for your help with me personally and getting me started in higher education. And I think we just have a really good program this year, Susan. We have some great balance. We had the Lieutenant Governor, I still refer to him as Coach Trussell, talking about efficiency, and I know his trademark is teamwork, consistency, and discipline, and that's going to be balanced against my presentation on Congress, which is not known for really any of those things. But you know, it's good to be here and to talk about the federal higher education update and what we've seen, like the Chancellor said, being prophets and seeing what's going ahead in the future for higher education. So just getting us started here on the big, beautiful bill we'll talk about, but first I do want to address the FY26 appropriations and government shutdown. We'll talk about implementation of the big bill, the compact that has been proposed for institutions of higher education, international students, research cuts, and student loan defaults, and some other issues. So that's a lot to cover today, but with SHEEO and our interest in higher education, of course there are many higher education associations out there. Our focus is really on the states and how these policy changes affect states and their ability to reach state goals. And SHEEO, of course, is a bipartisan organization. We're in blue states, red states. Each state has 1 SHEEO, some states have 2, but our focus is really on helping states achieve their goals for a higher education. So let's get into it. The FY26 appropriations process is stalled right now, as you all know, with the government shutdown. We are at an impasse. This is day 37. This is the longest government shutdown that we've experienced. And so this is going to have varied effects on different government operations. I'll talk a little bit about the U.S. Department of Education, how things will affect operations at the department. First of all, for students that are receiving federal student aid, that will continue to be dispersed. That's forward funded, so federal student loans and grants will continue to be during the shutdown dispersed by the U.S. Department of Education. If you have an existing grant with the department, those grants, you can still continue to draw down funding from those grants. And then rulemaking, which I'll talk about in a bit. At least this round of rulemaking is continuing despite the government shutdown. So that's what's going on right now. But as with all government shutdowns, it's one of those things where as these things drag on, the cracks become much more evident. So what's being paused? First of all, new grant making. So there are some grants from FY25 that we need to get out by the end of the year. So that's on hold for right now. The Office of Civil Rights Investigations, so OCR investigations, are going to be paused, as well as technical assistance from the department. So about 90% of the Department of Education right now is currently under furlough. There's also been efforts by the administration to lay off staff, particularly those in the Office of Post-Secondary Education that help out on with the administration of SHEEO programs. But those layoffs have been challenged in court. So we're still waiting how that all shakes out. But that could affect the capacity of the department to administer those programs. And of course, as you read about earlier this year, there were substantial layoffs at the U.S. Department of Education, and this would continue to reduce their capacity at the department. So that is currently under court challenge. SNAP benefits, this is another issue that affects colleges and universities. There's over 40 million Americans that are part of SNAP, including 1.1 million college students. So the latest I've heard is that they're looking at a partial distribution of SNAP benefits, but there's also been court challenges pertaining to SNAP. But that could present challenges on college campuses as well as students seek to access their SNAP benefits. So that's where we are at on government shutdown. Where are we at as far as funding the actual government and the differences right now? So what we're seeing is we have the president's budget, we have the House, we have the Senate, and so the Senate basically has passed out of the Appropriations Committee. I think the vote was 26-3, pretty bipartisan. The Senate, has that. They have a 60 vote threshold that they have to get through, so they work in a bipartisan manner. And basically, the Senate has level funded higher education programs. There's a few cuts here or there, but more or less the Senate, for the big programs, so I'm looking at Pell, Gear Up, SHEEO, those are level funded. The House would also level fund those programs, so what we'll likely see is those programs will be level funded next year. But as far as the campus-based aid programs, so that's SEOG as federal work study, those could be at risk of cuts. I think the best thing that we could hope for right now with the federal budget as things go forward is probably a continuing resolution that would level fund existing higher education programs. And then this is a chart that from the Committee for Education Funding, which just goes through, you can see the last few years it's been around about $79 billion in discretionary funding for the U.S. Department of Education. And the Senate, as you see here, would level fund that. The House would make some cuts, and the President's budget propose some cuts as well. The President's budget and the House budget are not identical. There's differences between the two, but they call for pretty substantial reductions at the U.S. Department of Education. So we are waiting on that, and hopefully we get some movement forward on those budget bills. So next, I want to transition and talk about the big, beautiful bill that passed this summer and how that could affect institutions of higher education in your state, as well as state governments broadly and your ability to fund higher education. So we'll start with the asset exemptions, loan limits, loan repayment, Pell, some accountability measures, regulations, tax policy, et cetera. So we'll get right into that. So the key thing to know about the reconciliation package is that this is a tax bill. This is a tax and spending measure. It's not an education bill. It will affect education, but it is a tax measure. Mostly, the main part was to extend the 2017 tax cuts. And so they were looking for savings in different areas of the federal budget, and the education programs presented some of those savings, but they also allowed for some new investments, and I'll talk about Workforce Pell in a bit. But this is, again, primarily a tax bill through the reconciliation process. So there are limits on how much policy they can change because it has to be related to taxes and spending. Okay. So the big beautiful bill, the first one is, and this will affect farm states, but is the asset exemption on the FAFSA. So on the FAFSA, until recently, if you had a family farm or small business and you had fewer than 100 employees, you could, those assets would not count against you at the FAFSA. That had changed in recent years, and now we're going back to the way it was before. And the reasoning on this is those are not liquid assets. So you can't just sell a piece of your restaurant or the family farm, et cetera. So those assets will be less than, if you have 100 or fewer employees, those assets will be exempt from the FAFSA starting July 1 of 2026. The new FAFSA that just came out a few weeks ago has this in that. So this has been advocated by the higher education community, and we think this will really help a lot of students, particularly those in farm states. Loan limits. This is a big change. Big change here. $44 million in savings over 10 years. And the reasoning behind this from Congress is just looking at the amount of borrowing that's going on with the federal student loan programs. We have $1.7 trillion in student loan debt. About half of that is actually from graduate programs. So what they're going to, and so what we had, if you look at this chart, how the system was developed is that we had the undergraduate student loans, and so those caps are going to remain in place, so you can take up to $57,500 in aggregate on federal student loans. That is not going to change for undergraduate students. For graduate students, there is a program called Grad Plus. Grad Plus allows you to take out graduate student loans up to the cost of attendance of that program. That is going to be phased out starting in 2026. Those that are currently in the system will be allowed to continue their program under the current rules. But the new system is going to be caps on how much you can take out as a graduate student in higher education. So this could have effects on how many students go on to graduate education. This could have effects on institutional finances. Okay? So there's going to be basically for graduate students 2 buckets. 1, master's bucket. 2, professional bucket. Okay? And so if you're in the master's bucket, you get $20,500 annually up to $100,000 in aggregate over your lifetime. If you're in the professional bucket, you will get $50,000 annually up to $200,000 in aggregate. Okay? This is a big change, and this is going to affect states and institutions of higher education. Right now, as we speak, there is a negotiated rulemaking session about which programs get put in what bucket. Okay? And the department is holding pretty firm that professional programs are one of 11, and you can think of them, the one that they gave on was clinical psychology, but it's ones you would think of: medical degree, JD, veterinary school. I can't name all of them, but there's 11 of them, and what they're counting as professional degree programs that will be allowed up to that $50,000 in federal student loan debt. There are efforts by different groups, different associations and the like to try to get into that $50,000 professional bucket. I know we're talking about aviation this morning, architecture, a few other ones that consider them, that they would consider themselves part of the professional group. But right now the department's holding firm on what they consider to be 11 programs that would be considered professional degree programs. Okay? So that's being hashed out right now. And there's also going to be changes to the Parent Plus loan program. Okay? Familiar with the Parent Plus loan program? Some of you? Yeah? So the Parent Plus loan program, right now, again, allows borrowing up to cost of attendance. And this is going to be reined in, so this is going to be capped at $20,000 annually with a total lifetime cap per child of $65,000. Okay? So again, it's concerns about the exposure to taxpayers on all the student loan debt, but there's also concerns about that this Grad Plus program is fueling tuition inflation. So this is why Congress went in this direction, but this is going to have, I think, really substantial impacts on the number of students going on to graduate education. Where it matters to states is I think that there's going to be more pressure on states to develop student loan programs. Okay? And I know there's some chatter in some states right now about developing student loan programs, but if you go up to the $50,000 max, and I'll give you an example. I just checked this morning. The law school or the medical school across the street here is $71,000 in tuition, and then the cost of attendance is all in $116,000 a year. So they will go well beyond this cap of $50,000 annually. So those students are going to have to dip into the private markets in order to finance their education. And there are some states that are looking to potentially create student loan programs. Some states already have student loan programs, but some states could create new loan programs in order to cover those students and provide access to higher education. Again, it doesn't mean that they won't get access in the private markets, but some states are looking to extend new loan programs to them. So that's just something to watch out for. And the new data that has come in, this is not from the federal government, this is from a think tank at American University, just the share of students that would be over that cap on graduate education. So it looks to be close to 26%. And then this is the Parent Plus loan program. So overall Parent Plus loans, less than 10% of folks take out Parent Plus loans. But of those, a substantial number would be currently over that limit. So that is where we are at on the federal student loan caps. On loan repayment, so this is actually where the bulk of the savings came in. So we talked about the being a tax and spending bill and that this was used to advance some savings. This is where the bulk of the savings came in. So Congress for a long time has said, we have too many student loan repayment programs and we need to streamline it. So this is going to make it a lot simpler. They're going to have a standard loan repayment program as well as a second one, income-based program known as RAP, Repayment Assistance Program. So that is going to start in 2026. For those that are currently in the system, they're going to have to transition to standard loan repayment program or RAP, or there's also income-based plan based on when they borrowed, so it's going to be a little bit more complicated for them. But the basic gist of this is that that the whole plethora of maze of student loan repayment programs is going to be consolidated. And then this is just a breakdown, a screenshot from our friends at TICAS, just about how all of these programs, how this is going to be structured for federal student loan borrowers. Okay. Pell Grants. So where are we at on Pell Grants? This is, of course, a change that's going to affect states very significantly. One, we're going to talk about workforce Pell. And I really welcome your thoughts about how your state is going to approach workforce Pell. It does include new funding to stabilize the Pell Grant program, which is looking at pretty substantial deficits. Students are going to be ineligible for Pell Grants if their total cost of attendance is already covered by other sources. Okay? This one was put in, and I don't want to out the senator who did this. He used to be a football coach, a Division I football coach, and there only is one senator that used to be a Division I football coach. But this has to do with he saw that Division I athletes were getting these full rides as well as Pell Grants, and so he wanted to rein that in. And if you get a full ride up front, you will not be able to get access to the Pell Grant program. This is somewhat concerning, and so we're going to watch and negotiate a rulemaking how this all plays out. But the concern is that Pell historically has been a first dollar program, and that this would shift the thinking on Pell to be a last dollar program. So if your total cost of attendance, so that's tuition, books, room and board, et cetera, if your whole cost of attendance is covered either through state, institutional, or private sources, you would not be eligible for the Pell Grant. Okay? So how CBO has scored this was they looked at 3,000 college athletes. And the intent from Congress, and intent in a few dollars will get you a cup of coffee, but the intent of Congress, and they've expressed this, was really about athletics. So we'll have to see how this changes, but Pell Grants for those that have full COA already covered will no longer be allowed. Okay? So just moving along here, I do want to get into Pell Grant, so the Workforce Pell Grant program. So this is going to affect states because, first of all, because of governors are going to have to work with state workforce boards to approve programs. So what kind of programs are we looking at? Right now, to be eligible in the Workforce Pell Grant program, you have to be between 150 and 599 clock hours and 8 to 15 weeks in duration. Okay, so right now the minimum is 15. This is going to pull this back to a minimum of 8 weeks. It has to be from an accredited institution. Prior versions of the bill included like non-accredited actors. This has to be an accredited provider. It cannot be in correspondence courses. So governors, in concert with state workforce boards, are going to have to determine that these programs are aligned with high-wage, high-demand jobs or in-demand industry sectors, meet employer requirements, lead to a recognized stackable portable credential, and provide credit toward a certificate or degree program. Okay? So have any of your states had initial conversations on this? A few states? Okay. So would welcome thoughts on how that's going. I've heard concerns from some other states about there's actually not as many programs as you'd think that would fit into that box. This is something that SHEEO is looking at, is digging into along with our colleagues at the National Governors Association. But governors and working with state workforce boards are going to approve programs, and then it goes to the Department of Education and they're going to look at, has the program been operating for a year? What are the completion rates? What are the job placement rates? And there's also value-added earnings. So that is the process. We expect new programs to come out. It starts on July 1 of 2026, but we expect in earnest programs to be really coming online in early 2027. So these are just other provisions in the legislation. On accountability, this is a new provision on accountability. So the logic behind this with Congress is they want to make sure that programs are providing a good bang for their buck for students. Okay, and the House had a provision in their version called risk sharing, which institutions would be on the hook for a share of their unpaid student loan debt. That became very complicated because that could affect access. So the Senate came back with a provision that basically said, just do no harm. Do no harm. And so these are the two for undergraduate threshold and then graduate students. This is not certificate programs, so this is just undergraduate and graduate programs. So the majority of completers, new student loans, not Pell, just student loans from undergraduate programs where the majority of completers earn less than the median high school graduate in the same state. And then for graduate students, it's where the majority of completers earn less than a bachelor's degree recipient in the same field in the same state. So that is the new accountability mechanisms. So they've actually run the data. The same group that I talked about earlier has been running the data. Again, the estimated savings is $777 million over 10 years from CBO. So CBO does not see this as creating huge cost savings. unlike some of the other provisions. So how many programs would this affect? And the initial numbers that we've seen from this think tank is, in the public sector at least, about 1.4%. 1.4% of students would be in programs that would fall under this threshold. All right. And you can see here, undergraduate certificates, again, would not be part of that. They're under a different regime called gainful employment. But you can see the distribution between the associate's degree, bachelor's degree, and master's programs. And then you can see over there what they estimate to be the programs to be most affected by this new accountability provision. Okay, and this is just the threshold by state. And the share of students that have earnings below the earnings threshold, so you can see this broken down by state. But again, most programs, well over 95%, will be over this minimum threshold set by Congress. Okay, and you can see here just the differences between the gainful employment, which is a regulation at the Department of Education, and the new accountability framework. Next, I'd like to move on to Medicaid. This may be the most important part of the bill affecting higher education. It is not in the education section, but the first and second order effects could be fairly substantial. So what are the Medicaid changes? There's going to be, the Kaiser Family Foundation has estimated, it looks to be close to $1 trillion over 10 years for Medicaid changes. So for students that are participating in Medicaid, and there are millions of students that are on Medicaid, they could be affected by this. Rural hospitals, university systems, of course, have hospitals throughout states. Those could be strained by the changes to Medicaid, but also, of course, state budgets, and something that you all work closely on. State budgets could be pretty dramatically affected by these changes. There's also SNAP. So SNAP is also going to have new changes on it. So there's going to be 5 to 15% payments based on state air payment rates, plus new administrative costs. So the administrative costs for SNAP are currently 50-50. That's going to change to 75-25. This is going to be delayed a few years, so there could be changes if when the new Congress takes office in 2027. But this could have, again, substantial first and second order effects. This is from Kaiser Family Foundation about the federal Medicaid cuts. This is just a breakdown for states. You can see how states are affected. Those states that did not take Medicaid expansion would not be affected as much. This is also, again, just a breakdown. You can see with the provider taxes and the work requirements, et cetera, how this would affect Medicaid. And then how would this affect higher education? Well, there's been research actually done on the relationship between state Medicaid spending and higher education. And this is Peter Orszag at Brookings who's done that. King Alexander, the former president of LSU, has done research on this. But if you look at NASBO, which is the National Association of State Budget Officers, they put together a pie, and this is one from 1990 below, about Medicaid was 9.3% of state general fund expenditures. Now it's double that, and higher education was about 15% back then, and now it's around 9%. So this, again, as the Medicaid slice of the pie increases, that could have effects on higher education. And this is just from the Georgetown Center on Equality and Poverty. So this is the pre-bill and post-bill, what the SNAP obligations per state would be. So that is the big, beautiful bill. And happy to answer any questions about that. But I do want to get into negotiated rulemaking, which I mentioned earlier. So this is ongoing right now, and how this is basically going to put meat on the bones as far as how we operationalize this bill. So the reimagining, the first is called the RISE Negotiated Rulemaking Committee. So this is going to focus on student loan provisions. That's the one that's at work right now. And then the second one is going to be called the AHEAD Committee, and that is going to start in early December and early January. Okay? A key question, and I don't have an answer to this right now, is how this shutdown is actually going to affect the second committee, because they have not selected anyone for that committee yet. And that committee is, again, going to start in early December. Whether that committee is going to be delayed or how that's all going to play out. But that committee is going to be much closer watched, because that is going to be the committee that's going to be working on the new workforce Pell provision. Okay. So again, they're going to be, and how this all works on negotiated rulemaking, as you can see, each constituency in higher education gets a seat at the table. So 2-year, 4-year, for-profit, SHEEOs get a seat at the table. Sometimes it's financial aid officers or attorneys generals, et cetera. So you get different constituency groups, and they negotiate rules, so definitions, data, et cetera. So they're going to be the ones who are going to put in, what programs are considered professional versus not. And that they have to reach consensus in order for their rule to take effect. If all the people at the table there do not reach consensus on the final rule, then the U.S. Department of Education gets to write the final rule. Why this is important? Historically, you would have to have all the rulemaking done and the public comments on the rules done by November 1 for it to take effect the following July. This one is actually not going to. It looks like they're not going to do it that way, just because of how late the bill came in. So it looks like they're going to have this all done by June 1 of next year. So there could be a quick turnaround for campuses as far as getting the new rule online, which is the new rules are going to start by law on July 1 of 2026. So. I mentioned this earlier about the divide between the professional and the master's degree. And if we go to the next one, other rulemaking that has gone on at the Department of Education, this could affect states, this could affect cities, universities, and other jurisdictions. What is this? This is on the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program. How many of you are familiar with PSLF? Some participants may be in PSLF. So this is going to limit the definition of qualifying employer for public service loan forgiveness. So right now, if you're in the public, if you work for the public sector, you work in the nonprofit sector, you are eligible for the PSLF program. So you make 10 years of payments based on income-based repayment. All the rest of your loans are forgiven. It's a pretty generous program. The administration has been working on a new rule that they just put out that would limit it to if your employer has work that has been deemed a substantially illegal purpose, okay? And what they've highlighted is illegal immigration, terrorism, illegal discrimination, and surgeries related to transgender youth. So those are areas that they've highlighted. Critics have come back and said that this could weaponize the program, or this could, if they're mad at a state or a city or what have you, that this could limit people working in a city from accessing PSLF. So that is the subject of a new court case, just as that new rule came out. So just to finish up here, and I only have about 10, 15 minutes left. Workforce Pell, so we mentioned that earlier, that states are preparing task forces on the Workforce Pell program. There's also, I think, going to be, in addition to looking at what the data infrastructure is and stackability and portability of programs, there's also, I think, going to be a push for additional consumer protections that states can take on to protect students participating in the Workforce Pell program. So there was a post put out by a group called TICUS the other day on different legislation that states could consider as they go into legislative session next year about students participating in the Workforce Pell. All right. And then the Trump Compact. And so just to finish up here, so They are putting this compact together for institutions, and they have a number of requirements that they've asked for those that participate in exchange for advantages on federal funding. So they want to have equality in admissions. Some of these things are already, like race and admissions. You can't discriminate on the basis of race and admissions. They want to extend that to other areas. They want a greater focus on GPA and test scores. They want a greater marketplace of ideas and civil discourse. Non-discrimination in faculty and administrative hiring. They want institutional neutrality, and I know some faculty have raised concerns about this provision, that this could limit the ability of faculty to speak out. Student learning, so they want a greater focus on transparency in grading. So there's been a lot of stories about grade inflation in higher education. So they want to combat grade inflation. Student equality, so focus on the two sexes. The biggest one I've seen from public higher education's perspective is the 5-year tuition freeze. This would be a 5-year tuition freeze to participate in this compact and get these advantages, as well as limits on foreign students. Okay. So that is where we are at on the compact. I know New College of Florida, University of Texas, a few others have expressed interest in joining this compact. So we're going to have to see in the months ahead how this is all operationalized. But we could also see elements of this compact. So some of the things that I mentioned there could be included in federal regulations going forward. International students, I know I've talked to a few of you about international students. So this could have substantially affect institutional budgets. So we've seen significant declines in international students. The two countries that you watch with international students are China and India. That's over 50% of your international students right there. So, but we're also seeing declines in Africa and Middle East, and this is attributed to changes in vetting procedures, travel bans on some nation states, deportations, and changes in visa processing. There's been reductions, and I've talked with a few of you about SHEEO and Gear Up. Of course, the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, that would affect institutions as well. But I know DEI was a flag for the administration for grants that were out there that included language related to DEI. And there's also changes to, and this is particularly interest of your research institutions, indirect costs. So this would limit indirect costs to 15%. Across the board for agencies including NSF, NIH, DOD, and Department of Energy. Many of those indirect costs are 30% or even beyond. This would ratchet that down to 15%. I was at a forum with the provost at Johns Hopkins a while back, and he said this came out on a Friday. They had the lawsuit filed on Monday morning. This is a big deal for research institutions, is limiting that those indirect costs. And then lastly, to finish up here, student loan defaults. This is going to get more attention in the news as the student loan pause ended in 2023. The Biden administration gave them a year as an on-ramp. You take that year, which was last fall, you add 270 days, you get to June of 2025, and you see here with quarter two, the student default rates are greatly increasing. So again, people for years didn't have to pay back on their student loans because of COVID. Now those loans are becoming due. Why does this matter for institutions? Because if your cohort default rate is 40% or above, you lose access to federal student loans. Okay? If it's above 30%, 2 out of 3 years, you can lose access to your federal student loans. So this is something that we'll be watching closely. And then just to finish up here, the MSI lawsuit. So there is a lawsuit right now targeting MSIs. There's also the administration cut off grants to MSIs. What does this mean? If you're an HBCU or if you're an HBCU or a tribal college, this does not affect you. Those are historically based missions. If you're a Hispanic serving institution, Native American serving non-tribal, Asian American, Alaska Native, etc., those are fairly new designations, and those are based on quotas. So Hispanic serving is 25% of students minimum. Native American serving non-tribal is 10%. Those quotas are being challenged in court because of the 2023 Supreme Court decision that said you could not discriminate on the basis of race. Federal accessibility rules, okay? This one is starting to get more attention. This is going to become due on April of 2026. Basically, this is a rule from the U.S. Department of Justice, and it says that your web content, including mobile content, has to be ADA compliant. And this is a lot of, you think of, and this affects the public sector, okay? So this is units of government, including public universities, have to have their web content be ADA compliant by April 26th of next year, okay? And so if you are 50,000 or less, so you're a smaller institution, you get till 2027. But if you're 50,000 or more, it's 2026. So this is a fairly sweeping change. And again, there was just an article this morning in Inside Higher Ed about institutions not being prepared for this, but this is a big change for higher education. IES, they're changing the statistical agency, so that's an ongoing change. So they got rid of most of the staff there, and they're basically rebuilding IES from scratch. iPads, they're going to be collecting new data related to admissions. And then lastly, the H-1B visa, they're including new fees up of $100,000, and that could affect institutions. So, and their access to foreign talent and faculty. So I know that was a lot. I'm happy to take any questions that folks have. They have 2 minutes? Okay. Well, I'll be around too, though, so please feel free. Any questions on any of that? And I do put out a morning email, so if folks are interested in subscribing to that.
You're staying through dinner?
I'm staying through dinner. I'll be here tomorrow too, so, but happy to answer any questions that folks have.
I do have a question.
Yeah.
David Pierce, Missouri. You talked about the compact and that being distributed more widely. I think it started out with just 9 universities, so where are we on the status of that?
Yeah, so they've opened up the first it was 9 institutions, and at first it was only, I think, Texas of those. I think 7 outright said that they weren't interested. 2 of them said, you know, we're going to continue to have conversations, but none of them said yes. Now they've opened it to all institutions. New College of Florida has said that they're very interested in signing. I'm not sure about other institutions right now, but that's sort of where things are at. But as far as how this process is going to play out, how you sign it, what benefits are going to be conferred, as well as the legality of it, because a lot of these federal programs are written in statute as far as how you evaluate whether you get the grant or not. So there's questions about how that how this would conflict with existing federal laws. Yep.
Tom?
Yeah.
The cap at 5% international students for a country.
Yep.
Was there any discussion about Canada, because we have so many campuses that have proximity to Canada? I mean, we're not just talking hockey here, by the way.
We could find a hockey exemption.
To be clear, yeah. They probably would do it for that.
Yeah.
But they're included in there, I assume, right?
My understanding is that, in just reading the compact, there was no more than 5% from any individual country. So, and this was a 15% cap overall. Yeah. But what I would say is about the compact is that the administration has said that this is kind of a first draft that they're putting forward to get conversation going about these issues. So it could be altered. Yep.
I had a question about Pell.
Yeah.
This is Blake Flanders from Kansas. If Pell becomes last dollar, how does that affect the last dollar programs within the states? Like, who gets to be the last dollar?
Right. That is a core question right now. And actually, Senator Cassidy, who's the chair of the Senate Help Committee, put out an FAQ speaking to that exact issue and saying that this provision on Pell would not affect those state last dollar programs. But again, that's the intent of the legislation. That's what they're telling the department, that this is why we did this. And I would just hope that the department would not interrupt those existing programs. So, yeah. And I think most programs, but there are a few that cover cost of it. Most are last dollar tuition programs, so they wouldn't be eligible. But for those that are full cost of attendance, yeah, that's I think where the real questions are.
From the looks on your faces, I can tell that you got value out of this presentation. Please join me in thanking Tom.
All right. Thanks, everyone.